So many congratulations to you, Chandana. And for all our audience, Chandana has secured rank 50 in the Civil Services examination, exactly half a century. It was probably her third attempt in the Civil Services examination, and she has progressively improved her ranks twice. All right. So congratulations, Chandana. What were you doing when the result came, and what was your first reaction?
Thank you so much, sir. So we were expecting the result to come on that date. So I was just refreshing the results page multiple times. And so I immediately opened the file when it was put on a couple of Telegram groups. And the first thing I did was put my phone on airplane because I was not ready to take any calls or receive messages. And
you were worried that if there's not good news, then everybody will ask what happened.
Yes, sir. I didn't want to deal with the good and bad in any case. And I checked the result on my laptop, and I was using the Adobe PDF reader. I was trying Control F, and even at CHAND, it was not showing any hit because it shows at a full name hit. And I was really stressed by then, and I thought, okay, might as well now type the entire name. And it was in the first page itself. So that was something I didn't believe. Then I sent that PDF to a couple of people to see it again and tell me if it's my name. And that's when it kind of hit that, yes, this exam, I don't have to write it again. Wonderful.
So can you tell us about your, about your family, your educational background and family background?
So, sir, I always tell that I come from extreme privilege. For that matter of fact, my grandfather was in the Indian Administrative Service, and because of the awareness that it created, he was ready to send his children to different fields. So my father studied engineering, and he went on to complete his master's and then work in the US. And I also lived abroad till my 4th, 5th standard, and we came back then to India. My mother's a teacher. She was earlier teaching up to 8th standard, and now she's only a pre-primary teacher. And I finished my education in Hyderabad. I did up till 10th in Bharatiya Vidya Bhavan's Jubilee Hills, and post that my 11th and 12th in Vijaya Ratna Junior College. There's a separate entrance exam to get there. And post that I went on to do chemical engineering from BIT Mesra, and I passed out in 2017. I did my MBA post that from IIM Indore. And from there, I got a campus placement. I went to Deloitte to work 14 months. And that is the place where I decided, okay, now I want to give civil services examination.
So why, when you went to work in corporate sector, then what went wrong or what went right? What attracted you or pulled you for civil service? One is, of course, you had a family background. But then what was the thinking that time when you were working?
So one thing was about a self-doubt. I didn't clear IIT JEE, and that was always in the back of my head. Can I compete with IIT? And because when I was writing or seeing the people in the top 50, my statistics were telling me 25 out of 50 were always IITians. So there was this factor about, can I ever compete with people? So that self-confidence. But after IIM, after a private job, I realized that there was a level of consistency I was maintaining in everything I was doing. So I believe with consistency, I can probably attempt in the examination. I was never sure of a rank, but I thought at least with consistency, I would be able to write the examination. And the second thing was always about the nature of job satisfaction, sir. So when I was working, I had certain targets, every weekly target, monthly target, or pitching about what is the work I'm doing and everything. But there was no sense of satisfaction because I didn't know what is the final result it was going to yield. And I believed civil services was one way where I could be so satisfied that if I came back and slept that night, I would be so peaceful and I wouldn't have a second thought about getting up the next day morning, which was not the case when I was working in the corporate.
So earlier we used to see that students finish their graduation and then they decide to prepare for civil services. But increasingly we see that now students who are in second year or third year or even first year, they are preparing for civil services. So what would you suggest? When is the right time to begin preparation?
So according to me, a right time to prepare would always be after graduation, because I believe graduation in itself is something that can teach you so much more. It's just not about going to classes, it's about your peers, it's about what you learn from other activities, be it extracurricular activities, leadership activities. And a student who starts preparing in a second year or a third year is giving up on a lot more that they're supposed to learn that a college is offering. So my advice would always be for them to start a little later, or if they're starting to start in such a small level that it should be half an hour or 1 hour of their schedule, and they should be able to academically sustain what they're doing even in their graduation. Because I believe statistics also tell us that the probability of success in this exam is so low. So if your graduation, which is your base for a career going forward, a person should be ready to invest a specific amount of time in it.
So how did you come to know about ForumIAS?
So I think it was COVID, and I happened to see in a couple of Telegram groups that there is a forum group where there's a lot of motivation that goes on for people during COVID and who don't have any other source of contact. So I didn't do any coaching, so I didn't have any source of peer group or anything. So when COVID happened and I was feeling a little low on targets, or I was just not having the mood, so that was when I opened the group. And I remember Nuyon and some people, Nuyon happens to be you, which I came to know very later, posting messages saying just think about today, or just think about these few hours, everything will pass. And some of these messages were very instrumental for me, so that is the point. But I didn't know of any courses at that point. It was just following some messages, some guidance, some pointers for people who are not clearing examinations to not feel disheartened. So that my starting point was the blog back in 2020.
So you improved your rank every single year. You reservist first, and then you got revenue service, and then you came finally to the Indian Administrative Service. So during all these attempts, how did you slowly make improvements? What was your strategy, or what was your mindset?
So for the first attempt, I was not mentally prepared for mains, sir. So I was only focused on clearing prelims. So that year, when I gave mains, whatever I studied for that mains was on those 100 days of prelims to mains time. So my notes, whatever I made, were very, very short. So the advantage, the pro side of it was that the notes were very specific, and it was a very important revision time also for me. But the negative side was it was not good enough that if I went with those notes for 2021, I would probably not be in the list. So I knew this at 2020 attempt itself. So I never even appeared for, I didn't even apply for 2021, because I believed that this attempt itself will tell me if I'll at least be in the list or not be in the list. So when the result came, when I was just the borderline candidate, that's when I thought, okay, so I will write 2022. And then I redid my entire notes for every subject in mains. I took 5-6 months and redid everything from the scratch. So my focus then was on bringing notes down to 250 words for everything, and to write a lot of tests along with it, and at the same time read newspaper and try to build on the content. So this is what I did for my second attempt. But when I saw my mark sheet of that year, my GS marks improved from 370 to 417. But my essay score, which was 128 in my first attempt, dropped to 85. So that marks was enough to put me to a 313. So I was not sure about what had to be done. So when I took your advice also, sir, so which was that I should take up content. I should take up current affairs classes and ethics plus classes, where you thought ethics plus would help me in my essay. So I did take those two courses. Apart from that, I wanted to focus on ethics also. So I took a separate specific test series for it. For sociology, one place where I consistently maintained my score at 280 in both my attempts, I was ready to again take a content building course, which was ForumIAS plus sociology. So I was ready to improve even if I thought I was getting consistent scores in something. So I think some of these factors might have helped me in seeing a better mark. But one thing I would also want to tell is the way I wrote the test did not really change in all my 3 attempts. So there is an element of luck also, which I believe is very strong.
So your answer writing strategy or something remained the same. Maybe slow percolation of content may have happened as we progress through the years. Wonderful. Coming to the prelims examination, how many questions did you attempt, and what was your overall approach for preparing for the prelims?
So I'll first come to the first part of how I thought I would attempt. So in both my previous attempts, I got above 105. Both the times I was clearing forest cutoff. So my approach to prelims has always been to do 100 mocks. I will not suggest it to everybody. I am extremely scared of prelims, and for me the only way was to do a certain number of mocks and to come at a scientific number of marks, average marks that I'm getting in mocks, and average number of questions that I'm getting right in mocks. Again, it's not of one coaching institute. I diversify them around 10-15 coaching institutes, papers, simulators, open simulators, everything put together. And my average has always been around 85 to 86 that I have to attempt to be able to get a 100 mark. So I have utilized that in both my previous attempts. But 2023, when I tried to do the same thing, I do not think I was so successful, mainly because the paper was not of an elimination strategy, but it was more about accuracy. So I think if people are attempting or they should have a dynamic mindset, that they shouldn't go with a mindset that I attempt 85 or 86. So if realistically this year I would want to change my strategy, I would probably look at an 82, 83 also. I wouldn't probably attempt more. I would attempt on the lesser side.
This year, how many did you attempt? Like 20, 23?
I attempted over 90, sir, and I think that was wrong. I was an extreme. I think I still have to see my mark sheet, but I think I would be an extreme borderline candidate around 75, 80. I wouldn't be getting more.
And what strategy, given that we had newer kind of options that only one is correct, only two is correct? So if you're able to eliminate out of A, B, C, D, two options like A and B is incorrect, and you're left with C and D, did you attempt those questions or you would not attempt those questions?
I attempted all those questions also. I was ready to take the risk, but I think people should calculatedly take a risk now. Instead of attempting all, just attempt 4 or 5 out of the 10 when you're eliminating options.
Coming to the Civil Services Aptitude Test, over the past 3 attempts that you have written, the CSAT has become a lot challenging, isn't it? So what do you think is the appropriate strategy for CSAT for students who are now writing the exam?
So first I would want to set a disclaimer, because I am someone who has studied a lot for GRE and CAT in my previous years. I have had a basic level of aptitude, and because of which I have never even done any specific mocks in both my previous attempts. And even in 2023, I have mostly walked into the examination hall without any formula revision, anything. Because I think I could at least do bare minimum. That was my confidence. But the paper was on the trickier side, and even for me, I think I would have 1-2 questions here and there and I would be out of the list. So if somebody were to do CSAT, and if it was just to be me, if I were to give 2024 CSAT, the things I would do are, first is do a normal analysis of the kind of questions that are coming in numerical part, which is number system. What are the kind of questions that are coming? Question type. I would go on a question type and not question syllabus, and practice the last 5-6 years previous year questions, and take a question type and try to solve tougher questions of that question type. For example, there is normally a question that comes, a work done by 5 people is 10 days, and what is the kind of work that 3 people can do in 8 days, something like that. So if I'm not able to solve this, I'll pick the toughest of the questions, which will have maybe 10 sets of questions, and try to practice that and to get the question type correct. So but again, everybody will have a different strategy. So people who are coming from maths background or who are coming from engineering background should practice what they're good at and devise their strategy in such a way that they're optimizing on it. People who are coming from humanities, I think their strategy should be that first half an hour they're doing mathematics, and then the next one bulk hour is where they're solving all the 29-30 English questions as a stretch, where they should get almost 80 to 90% accuracy, and then come back to the last half an hour of maths. Something like that, a strategy where they're optimizing their strength.
In terms of number of hours, how many hours would you suggest giving, like 3 months before the prelims versus in the last month before the prelims? What should be should we practice CSAT daily, or should we just take it weekly? What would be your strategy or a recommended strategy?
Sir, I think this will be extremely person dependent. If I was very underconfident of CSAT, or if I never crossed a 66 mark, I would probably put 2 days in a week in the first 6 months of preparation. If I'm a first attempter, I would probably give at least 3 days in a week towards it. And if I'm someone who's given one attempt and who's at least crossed 70, 80s, I would probably put it 1 day in a week. And towards the last 2-3 months, my strategy would be to at least do like 5-6 mocks or even more. And also practice previous year questions and do those papers multiple times. And to put a UPSC key, most of the times we forget when we are doing a previous year question, we don't put the previous year key in front of us. I would want people to do that when they're doing, they'll have an idea on how the answers are, at least with respect to reading comprehension.
And between reading comprehension and the numerical ability, which part do you give more emphasis?
So I give more emphasis to numerical part, because I think there is one perfect answer. English, what we have seen is UPSC key has given certain bouncers once in a while. So numerical part is where you can be confident of scoring when you're coming out of the exam hall.
In the prelims examination, the year where you studied the hardest for the prelims, I'm sure everybody studies 1 year the hardest for the prelims, then you figure it out, and probably what was your typical day like? Like what time did you wake up? How many hours did you study? What time did you sleep?
So the highest I've worked was in my first attempt. That year I was doing it with a job for the initial part until July and August. So that year prelims was in October. So till August my work schedule was normally that I wake up early and studied from 5 to 9 and then work with work from home. So it was normally I would take out 1 hour during lunch and broadly revise some subject. And in the second half, which is 7 to 9 p.m. slot, I would give an examination. proper to our examination, and 9:30 or 10 is when I would analyze it and make an error log out of the entire examination, which is a one pager on at least 29, 30, 35 questions I got wrong. And the next day morning, the first thing I would do is revise it, and then again 7 to 9 p.m. I would give an examination. So by the end, I had almost given 120 examinations or a little more towards the end. So this was my most strategy, which was more examination oriented, but I would put in a lot more time into analyzing it also.
Coming to the mains examination, did you make notes for the mains examination?
Yes, sir, I made notes. I made different notes in all the 3 attempts. It was not the same notes.
You used to improvise on the notes?
It was redoing the entire thing, destroying the earlier notes, because most of the times it becomes a habit that we have notes, we will read them. So every time I used to go with the mindset that I will make notes from the scratch, and that way I'm revising. I'm also adding new content, new ideas or something that I saw from a topper copy. And 3 is every year we get a different topper answer copy. So I used to take that year's rank 1's copy as the benchmark going forward. So I used to always redo my entire notes for everything. Even optional, I have redone my notes all the 3 times.
So for this attempt, which toppers copies or which toppers did you follow and you felt that you aligned your strategy or your writing styles?
So one topper's copy that has always been standard was Vishaka Yadav ma'am, which was 2019. That was the first copy I saw. And Divya Mishra ma'am, her ethics copy specifically. And for Vishaka Yadav ma'am, her GS copies. These 2 were my standards. And for sociology, it was Dhatri Reddy ma'am's copy. And for this year, 2023, for sociology, Gunjita Agarwal ma'am's copy. And for ethics, I saw Garima Lohia ma'am's copy and even Uma Harti ma'am's copy.
So when you made notes, was it all paper notes or digital notes?
For main, sir, it was always paper. For interview, it was always digital.
And when you make notes, you make it very crisp, concise, or you write elaborate notes? How is it the strategy like?
So my note making strategy is always about being crisp. So the first attempt I used flashcards for that purpose, but by the end of 100 days I noticed I made 3,500 flashcards to revise 7 subjects. So the next time I went for A4 size sheets, and I realized even then I was making it extremely bulky. So this time what I did was I made it keyword focused, like I will not cross more than 1 A4 size sheet for 1 syllabus. So at the end for GS2 I should just have 20 pages notes, because they just specifically 20 topics, something like that. So that was my idea.
So coming to newspaper, did you read any newspaper or you were not able to read the newspaper during your attempts?
So I was mostly able to read newspaper, and I used to read Hindu. But unlike what a lot of toppers suggested, I would not read editorials, because most of the time I thought I didn't understand from what context somebody is writing it. So my focus always used to be reading the first page, and then moving on to reading explained columns like that. And on Sundays, there used to be something on science and tech, so to read that. So my idea was to basically get to facts. And from 2022 attempt, I moved to Indian Express Online, where I used to only read explained 5 articles that come off that day, that's it. And just glancing through whatever is there in the main headlines. Never the editorials. But for interview onwards, from 2022, I started reading a lot of editorials, because it becomes very opinion oriented. So that is when I started reading editorials.
You're also part of current affair classes at Forum, so where we try to do issue-based preparation. So did you follow that approach of doing issue-based preparation, or you just went on and on? How was it like?
So initially I went on and on, but even after one attempt, I realized that there were certain topics which were much more important than me reading everything. So that is when I got to that issue-based part of it, and I started following some topics which I thought were appearing in the news more than 10 times in a week, or more than 10 times in a month. So that became a big important issue. So with the current affairs classes, I was able to utilize the notes that were given and to focus more on whatever issues I thought were relevant. Not just from the current affairs classes, but it was also a mindset to look at a trend. Like if I were to write 2024, I would be able to think from a perspective that there are certain news that have appeared so many times, and I will pick those and try to make my own notes.
With respect to the mains examination, so in paper 1 we have 2 topics, world history and post-independence history. A lot of times students think that since the weightage of these questions is not so much depending on the year, so what would you recommend, or what would you do if looking back? Would you leave it completely going by luck, or would you cover them, given that they take a lot of time to finish?
So like there'll be two different strategies. One for an attempter who's going into mains who doesn't have any notes on it, then the number of hours that they should put into these two should be significantly lower. Maybe 1 day's maximum is the time that they should give to both these subjects combined, because we're seeing hardly a 10 marker or 15 marker and they shouldn't be wasting more time on it. So what they should do is pick out the last 5-year papers, see the questions that have come, make broad notes out of it and move forward. But immediately after mains, most candidates try to take a break in that phase. That is when you can probably pick India After Gandhi as a book to read and make notes out of it for post-independent India. And for world history, to pick some small topper notes, like there is Bhavesh sir's notes that I used, to read them in that period. Immediately after mains, when you are taking a study break or when you're not sure about the next attempt, that is when, if second attempt or more, they should have solid notes even in these two topics.
And in general studies, paper 1, how did you deal with geography?
So for me, geography is a weak area. So one thing that I thought was to fill the first page of a geography answer with always a map. So I would try to make a map or a diagram or anything for that specific question. Even this year for George, I didn't exactly know what it was, but I knew that it was a glacial feature. So I tried to draw something. So I tried to cover at least half a page or 3/4 of a page with a diagram. And then the rest of the things I try to add some points or pointers. So that is how I have dealt with geography.
And this year means looking at the difficulty level, now we have the benefit of hindsight. Did you find the paper to be tough on the easier side?
So all the GS papers?
No, this mains, the last mains that you wrote.
So in that I thought GS1 was on the tougher side and GS2 was a little on the easier side. GS3 was a little on a specific side, like it wasn't easy for anyone. You had to have specific content to score, and GS4 was on the tougher side.
All right. And so we all read probably Lakshmikant for the prelims examination. Is it sufficient for the mains examination according to you?
No, sir, I do not think Lakshmikant in itself will be enough. We need to do a lot more value addition to be able to write a mains answer. But Lakshmikant is a base, because if somebody is thoroughly revised it some 10-11 times, any polity question that they see in mains, they would at least be able to write the first line, which is state the basic article from which that question is originating. If emergency is there, people should be able to quote Article 352, and that comes from Lakshmikant as a broad base.
Coming to General Studies Paper 4, what was your approach for Part A and the theoretical part of because which part did you attempt first?
So this year I attempted 5 questions, the first 5 questions first, and then I went back to case studies, and then I came back for the rest of the questions later.
And what was your strategy as in for the case studies?
The basic strategy was to finish every case study in a specific time, which was not to exceed more than 12-13 minutes. And for this, I would try to make certain diagrams or try to, because there is a lot of space, we need to fill 4.5 pages. So I would try to make a diagram of stakeholders or to make a very specific representation of facts of the case. Something like that, and to be very specific, to be able to point down A, B, C, D, the parts of the question and trying to answer everything of it. And the second thing I did was, I did not use the same template for all the case studies. So I diversified what I was doing. So if in one case study I'm talking about a way forward and something, in the next case study I start with a quote of a Gandhiji quote or something and state that this is the way to go. And the third time I would pick out the syllabus words and say this case study elaborates on neutrality, anonymity in civil service or something. And in the fourth case study, I did something else, which was to bring from 2 people and to utilize a scenario where 2 people are talking on a moral or something. So I basically did a different case study approach for every case.
Coming to answer writing, so how did you balance between, so we have 2 challenges. One is making the notes and revising those notes, and the other is doing writing answers for the mains examination. So how did you find a sweet spot or balance between the 2 of them?
So I think here the balance for me was, because in my first attempt itself I had 100 days to write mains and I really didn't have notes. So then I did a 70-30 where 70% of my time was to 7 hours, which was 7 hours was to just make notes, and the 3 hours was to write an exam. The advantage when I did that was whatever I wrote, I was able to replicate in the exam, which is a main advantage for a first timer. That whatever notes that they're making, they're able to replicate at least 20-30% of their notes. But while I went into the later attempts, I noticed that whatever new notes I'm making, I'm replicating very little out of those notes into my exams. So I think the main balance always would be to kind of redo your notes, because that helps you build a different mindset towards examination. And the sweet spot will always be about how you manage reviews or whatever writing style that you have and whatever criticism you're getting for it, versus how you think you need to keep improving your content.
So you were writing tests at the Hyderabad center. So did you write all the papers under 3 hours, or were you exceeding the timeline, and how did you manage your time?
So I was writing exactly in 3 hours, and sometimes I know that I've left one whole page in an answer and so on, but my point of view was to just focus for 3 hours and to be able to get my entire answer writing for 3 hours, for be it sociology, be it ethics, be it any GS1 paper.
How frequently were you writing the test? Like in a week, how many tests were you writing?
So this is for a third attempter, so I don't think this is for a first attempter. But in my third attempt, my focus was to, I had around 30 days leave from my department. I had technically 20 days because the other 10 days were even considering that 1 week to get to optional. So I had 20 days, so I wrote all 20 days, I wrote a test.
How important is the presentation of your answers?
So I think presentation is a very important aspect of how we are conveying something. It helps our answer to stand out, and the second part of it is how uniquely are you thinking, or uniquely you can think about it. So instead of writing a single line, can be represented in a small diagram or small way of representing, showing an arrow saying from this leads to this or something. Some of these are very important when you are doing your presentation, and I think it helps, but we shouldn't be extremely innovative, because we are going beyond answering the point also. So it must be in that context. So I think there was a suggestion that you gave, which was to make a box and to write a figure saying this is in relation to this, or this figure depicts so and so. I think that is very important when people are doing anything.
To set the context for the figure.
To be very specific.
And last 2 or 3 weeks before the mains examination, where technically, so you would be under a lot of stress, you have taken a leave, and the only purpose is to get the top service. Only one service is what you're looking for. So how did you, last 2-3 weeks before the examination, how many hours did you study, and how was your day like?
So I had an app called Yol Pumta, so where you clock in the number of hours, and I was averaging at least 10 hours consistently in every day. Even one day before mains examination, I was averaging that. So I think I was focused on just the process at that point. I was not thinking about what service or anything. So I was able to maintain my mindset.
What digital devices did you have during your preparation? The phone, a tablet, an iPad, or a desktop, or a laptop? What all devices did you use for your preparation?
My notes were all hand-based, so I was using that. And if I got any of my answer copy also, I would check it on, like I would try to get the physical copy, because I wrote a physical center. I would get back that physical copy and ask them to give me a physical printed key. So this was in interest to minimize the number of hours I was using any other device. But I did have a phone and an iPad, but the use of them were very limited. Phone was to just track the number of hours I was studying, or because I was in service, to if I got any mail or a message from them. Otherwise, not much.
Coming to the personality test, so did you get sufficient time to prepare for your interview this year?
This year I did, sir, because I happened to take leave from Indian Revenue Service to give my interview. So I had abundant time this time. Okay.
So what was the key elements of your interview preparation?
So key elements for me for interview preparation were, one, to be very to rigorously read the newspaper, to spend 2.5, 3 hours if need be. Because I already had bare minimum done for my DAF, it was only to improve it gradually on it. So I would spend maximum time on the newspaper. And the second part is to try to read a lot more editorials, be it even my regional news and so on, and to have an aptitude and to be ready to answer any question that came from that area. The second part was about the DAF. I would prepare on certain areas like Indian Revenue Service is something that got added. So I would gradually read certain things. And third part was doing a lot of mock interviews. I did around 10-11 mock interviews, gathered questions that they've asked, and tried to pick what is a prior question that they can ask from the question that they already asked me. Like if somebody asked me what is a tax, I would probably go a level down and think what is the philosophy behind tax. So, and one element after it, what do you think is future tax rate or something. So I would try to link and try to think like that and add question bank and create a final question bank which I revised before I went into the interview.
And which board did you get?
I got Dinesh Dasa sir's board.
What was the most difficult question that was asked to you?
So there was a question that they asked which was on street children. They said, the question was that I think I see a lot of street children on the roads of Delhi and I think they're a menace, and they are causing not only traffic problems but they're causing so many other moral issues for so many of us. We want to give money but we know that this will never be utilized by them. So you tell me how do you see this? And the second question was what do you think can be a solution to this? Can we ever stop this? Now even if you suggest an altruistic thing that the state must keep all of them and send them to schools, but don't you see that we'll have a flow of such children coming in from other states, neighboring states? So think of a policy measure from that perspective.
So coming to the end of it, though you were getting success every year, but still surviving the ordeal of writing the prelims and the mains examination for 3 years. So how did you survive?
So I think this exam has humbled me in its own way. So I have been able to survive this because every attempt I told myself that I'm going in as a first attempter. I have no baggage, I'm not carrying anything, no pride in getting selected prior or no sadness that I was never a top ranker. My focus is I'm going in as a first timer and I will do everything that a first timer will do when they go into the examination. But the second part is I think I accepted the element of luck also. I believe that I will do my work and leave the rest. I will not think about service or what happens next or what will I do next. I was extremely prepared to go for 2024 also. So immediately after my interview, to be very honest, it ended on 4th, and by 5th I already bought material, prelims, mock test that I thought I'll be giving when I go into 2024. So nobody is ever sure. I think a lot of toppers of this year also I'm sure are already preparing for 2024 when the result came. So I think to be mentally prepared is what helps us at the end of the day, even if we saw success or failure.
The last question. So when we start our preparation, we start with a certain pen, and by the end of it, we try to optimize our writing, the looks of the writing and the speed of the writing by choosing a certain pen. So were you loyal to one single pen all through all the 3 attempts, or did you?
No sir, I changed my pens. The first attempt I was using a ball pen, but second and third I stick to V5. So this is for left-handers out there. Please be very judicious. I was using ballpoint pens, and in the middle of the examination I noticed that I was seeing marks on the other side of the page. So whenever you choose a pen, please kind of always do a practice test in that 3 hours thing to know how you're writing with a pen. V5 is one pen I suggest to a lot of left-handers because I think it is an optimal pen. Doesn't come on the other side of the page.
All right. So in the past years of association that you've had with Forum, I've seen that you've been not only a book reader but a book reviewer as well. So can you name any of your favorite books and any quote that you remember from it?
So I read a lot of books, but I don't remember quotes in general. But if I had to think, one book that I read was Elements of a Separation by Achal Malhotra. The exact name was about a book on partition, that is the book. So it captures material memories from books, and it says ultimately what we hold. So what is of material value to us today, a generation later might look at it in a completely different view. So that kind of is one thing that I remember as of now.
And what's your favorite quote? Not from any book, but general.
Be the change you wish to see in the world.
So a lot of students are writing the prelims and will be writing the mains examination. What will be your message to the students who are writing this examination, maybe for the first time or maybe again?
I think there's already enough guidance and enough pointers there, but one element that I stress for prelims is you need to be confident. When you're walking into the exam, you should go with so much of confidence. Ultimately, all of us are reading the same kind of news, same kind of sources, also doing the same kind of mock examination. So it ultimately will boil down to those 2 hours and how finely are you able to think through just on the examination, not on the result, not on your hard work, nothing. Like in those 2 hours, how optimally are you able to think about just the question in front of you? That's it, nothing more, nothing less. And the second part is to not go in with a lot of baggage, not of emotions, not of hopes that people have on you or what you have of yourself. The idea is that this is an examination, so see it as an examination and to give your best and to not think about anything after it.
All right. Thank you so much, Chandana.
Thank you so much.
you.